Hello and welcome everyone to this ExecuNet program entitled Getting Results the Agile Way, a System for Executive Work and Life, featuring the perspectives of J.D. Meyer. My name is Joseph McCool, and I'm Senior Contributing Editor with ExecuNet, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to this program here today. We do plan on giving J.D. an opportunity to run through a PowerPoint slide deck. He'll run through his slides, and then at the conclusion, we'll invite your questions for him. To insert your question into the conversation, I'd like to direct you to the GoToWebinar control panel, which you'll find on your desktop. And specifically, you want to look for the blue Questions tab. It's there that you can type in your question, and we will then share that with JD, and we'll all listen for his reply and his expertise perspective. So we will hold questions. You can certainly type in a question during his presentation. If one of his slides plays to an issue that you have a question about or feel strongly about, you can certainly enter in your question during the slide deck. But once he's worked through it, we'll then transition formally to those questions. Without further delay, let me tell you a little bit more about our speaker today. J.D. Meyer is Principal Program Manager on the Enterprise Strategy Program team at Microsoft. He's a seasoned softie of 15 years and the author of 8 technical books from security to team development and application architecture. His first non-technical book is Getting Results the Agile Way. As a hobby and passion, J.D. studies success patterns at Microsoft up and down the chain of command at Microsoft. So welcome, J.D.
Thanks, Joe. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. And before we start, I want to share a little story about why do I even do this. So I've been at Microsoft for about 15 years, but when I started in developer support, and I got really good at managing the day-to-day, managing maybe for the week, but that was effectively my line of sight. And I ended up joining a group from there called the Microsoft Patterns and Practices team, and we did bigger projects. These projects varied in size anywhere from 3 months, 6 months, 18 months, and I had to have a more strategic view. And in the early days as a program manager, I got a lot of my results, you could almost say through heroic effort. Basically, I was always on time, on budget, high impact, but I threw time at things, I threw energy at things, and I had to find a different way. Around 2004, my manager basically penalized me. He said, "Thou shalt not work more than 40 hours a week. You shall work 40 hours a week, and you shall get as much impact as you've been getting out of yourself and out of everybody else on the team." Now, it might not sound like a punishment, but at the time, keep in mind, I was used to throwing time and energy to get the projects done and to make the high impact, so I had to learn a different way. Well, that's the year that the average program manager in my group normally was getting 1.5 projects done. I did 18. When this happened, it was a big deal. My manager said, "Okay, what you're doing, we have to scale for more people." He encouraged me to become an active mentor, both inside and outside of the company. He encouraged me to write the book, Getting Results the Agile Way. He encouraged me to put up a knowledge base on the web. It's at gettingresults.com. But basically, he really wanted me to share what I had learned about work-life balance, being more effective, and really focusing on outcomes and both enjoying the results and enjoying the journey. With that in mind, let's start. Next slide, please. A key theme that you're going to see throughout this is it's all about you being the author of your life and writing your story forward a day at a time and even a moment at a time. And we're going to make that real. Next. I love this quote. "It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that's the most adaptable to change." So what was Darwin teaching us? He was teaching us that it's not the smartest, it's not the fastest, but nature favors the flexible. Next. So why do we even need Getting Results the Agile Way? Well, if we look on the left-hand side, we've got these challenges. We've got too much to do, we're always on, we can't keep up, there's not enough time in the day, we feel like we're always in chaos, we're trying to get on top of things, we want to be able to ride that wave or even create our own waves. But how do we really respond? What is our response? So the key is to recharge and renew with skill. And I say with skill because that's important. It's one thing to want to do it, but how do you actually do that? It's about achieving meaningful results. It's not just about getting things done. It's about getting those fresh starts as opposed to carrying a bunch of baggage. And it's really about having a bias for action and putting boundaries and balance in place so that we actually don't burn out. And the most important thing is that it's about creating experiences. It's all about creating experiences that we want to look back on. We want to feel like we made a meaningful contribution, and we actually enjoy the days, the months, the years that we put under our belt. And one important concept here is that Agile doesn't mean fast. Agile means that you can respond to change. That's one of the big ideas. Next. So we're going to take a look at the philosophy and the tools that you can actually use to drive your life. And a big mantra in here is that it's all about driving your day or your day drives you. One of my early managers was a great mentor, and he basically said that if you're not controlling your time, somebody else is. If you're not coming up with the agenda, somebody else is. If you're not shaping your destiny, somebody else is. And really you can use these tools to shape your destiny. Next. So a pretty simple agenda. One thing that I want to call out, though, right up front is that the way to get the most of this, and this is a trick that you can use whether you're reading a book, at a movie, taking training, is focus on 3 takeaways. If you can get 3 takeaways that you can use and put into practice, it's your win. So focus on looking for 3 wins that you can actually use, and write those down as we go. Just look for the 3 wins, the 3 takeaways that you can actually use to change your game. So we're going to take a look at the system. We're going to look at 5 insights. We're going to go through 5 ways that you can drive your day, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. Next. So we're going to take a look at the system now. Next. There's 3 keys to the system. There's the rule of 3, there's Monday vision, daily outcomes, and Friday reflection, and there's hotspots. It's a very simple way to remember the whole system, but the rule of 3, Monday vision, daily outcomes, Friday reflection, and hotspots. The point behind the rule of 3 is it gives you a very simple way of dealing with overwhelm, information overload. It's about breaking things down into 3 parts, 3 memorable things. Marketing uses it, the military uses it. A lot of people find that if they can focus and break something down into 3 pictures or 3 parts, it's a lot easier to manage, organize, and deal with. When it comes to Monday vision, daily outcomes, and Friday reflection, the idea there is that this is a pattern for weekly results. Wouldn't it be great if on Monday you could identify 3 wins that you wanted for the week, and then each day 3 wins that you wanted for the day, and then on Friday you're taking a look back and you're reflecting. This is really how you design compelling days and compelling weeks. Originally created this because on our team we were putting in a lot of time, doing a lot of work, but the weeks we just weren't feeling like we were having those wins under our belt, and so we got deliberate about it. And when we focused on wins for the week and used this little pattern, Monday really put us in control. What would be those 3 wins for the week? And the beauty was we found that this could work for individuals, it could work for teams, and it really scales up and scales down. Hotspots, the point there is we always have a lot going on. There's always a lot in our life. But what if we could step back, take the balcony view, and think of it as a heat map? Where are we spending our time and our energy? Why are we spending our time and our energy on those things? The hotspots are really, it's like an opportunity map. It could either be areas of big pain or big challenges that you want to address, or areas of opportunity, new hotspots popping up. But basically the idea of hotspots, step back, look at the heat map, where are you going to go invest your time and energy? Next. So this is the weekly workflow at a glance. What we're doing is we're taking that Monday vision, daily wins, and Friday reflection, and we're putting that down on paper. What does that actually look like? So I mentioned hotspots. We've got projects at work, we've got our personal projects, and we've got this bigger picture called life. On Monday vision, the idea is to think of those 3 wins And these aren't activities, these aren't tasks. We've always got a bazillion things going on. These are the wins. This is stepping back and up-leveling it and saying, what are the outcomes that I want to achieve? What are those 3 results that I want to achieve? That's your Monday vision, your 3 wins for the week. Each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, what are those 3 wins for each day? Yes, we can have a laundry list of things to do, but what are the 3 wins that we want out of each of those days, and how do they help us win for the week? Friday reflection, that's basically asking yourself 2 sets of questions. First, what's going well? So what are 3 things that are going well? Celebrate the victories, enjoy the successes. Know what's working well and why it's working well. The next question is, what are 3 things to improve? What are areas where you can either bite off better things or focus on things that make more impact, or even focus on things that you enjoy more, or basically get more realistic about your own capacity and balance things better? And if you look at the overall idea of this Monday Vision, Daily Wins, Friday Reflection, it's really a plan, do, review loop, both for the week, and it's going on each day. But the beauty of that Friday reflection is that you're actually stepping back. You're actually noticing what's really working, what's really not. You're carrying the good forward into the next week, and you're carrying the things that you want to improve that you actually get the next week to work on. So it's really a simple system for both weekly results, and it's a continuous learning system. You actually get better and better as you use this system. Next. So this is taking that same idea, but if you're more story-driven, if you want your life to be about stories, if you want your impact at work to be about stories, this is a story-driven approach. So it's not call back a customer, it's win a raving fan. It's connecting that back into your values so you can basically have more energy as you go through your day and make your results more meaningful. And so we have a backlog of lots of things that we want to go achieve, but we bite off 3 big stories for the week, 3 little stories each day, and then that is how we basically build our results. So if you think about it, you're taking all the realm of possibility, boiling it down. What are 3 results I can bite off for this week? 3 stories for this week, and then 3 little stories each day. Again, it's the same loop, but this really is another lens that says, hey, you're the author of your life. You write your stories forward. Next. So how do you start this? How do you actually do Agile results? It's actually pretty simple, and this is what surprises people. You start by asking yourself, what are the 3 most important results I want to accomplish today? Now, it sounds simple, but if you ask yourself, did you start today that way? Do you actually know the 3 wins that you want for today? You might know a bunch of things that you got to go do, a bunch of things you even want to do, but what would those 3 wins look like? And it sounds simple, and the idea of it is, but where the growth happens is when you actually put it into practice. And to keep it really simple, to just get started, it's worth writing those 3 wins down. So for me, what I do is I always carry my little sticky pad, and at the start of my day, I'll just write my 3 wins down so I have them there in hand. And it really helps me prioritize, helps me focus throughout the day, and I can always look back and say, okay, am I on track? Am I trading up for something better? Or am I basically getting randomized? What does my success look like? So the idea of the rule of 3, and starting with this simple question, is you're basically setting yourself up for success each day based on the time you've got, the things that are the priorities, how much energy you've got, and you get to define your success. What would your 3 wins be? Next. Now, the thing that I want to really point out here is that no matter how you're already doing your daily to-do list, we all have our lists, whether it's on paper or floating around in our heads or some digital system. We have our list of to-dos. Maybe it's ranked, maybe it's prioritized, maybe it's just a laundry list. But the trick here is no matter how you're already doing it, you can bubble up 3 wins. So notice on the right-hand side, same list. So previous, it's the same list, but notice that we have draft complete, have a great lunch, project plan on track. I put have a great lunch there on purpose. We all have those days. You're going to have those days where your 3 wins are going to be great breakfast, great lunch, great dinner. It's important to remember that. We're human. I put draft complete up there because the big idea there is that sometimes your best win is getting to a milestone. If you have a draft complete for your piece of the great, milestone completed. Sometimes our best win is just getting something back on track. For example, I put getting the project plan back on track. There was a bunch of things to do in that day, but if I got the project plan back on track, that was a win. Next. So this is hotspots. And remember what I said earlier about how this is really your heat map. It's your heat map of where you invest your time and energy to get your results. And it's broken down pretty simply, but there's this meta level, the life frame, that's the big balcony view. Then there's work projects, there's personal projects, there's roles we play in work, there's roles we play in our personal lives. The idea of the life frame, mind, body, emotions, career, financial, relationships, and fun, the idea of that life frame was inspired by a particular game. I was playing The Sims. I was having a bad week. I'm not much of a gamer, but I decided to play the game The Sims. And within half an hour of playing the game, my wife was having an affair, the house burnt down, the kids were off to boarding school, and I was surprised. I thought this was supposed to be a game, and I guess it was. It was the game of life. The big thing that I learned from that was that I had this pattern where one thing would get out of control, and then I would go chase another thing, throw all my time and energy at that, and then chase the next thing. What I wasn't doing, and what the game was a good reminder of, was, are you investing your time in your actual priorities? Do you know what your priorities are, and are you actually spending your time in those things? So that was really a great wake-up call, but it also reminded me that, hey, do I have a simple set at my fingertips of some of those important, meaningful buckets? And the beauty is that right here is it's a starting point. I have mind, body, emotions, career, financial, relationships, and fun. People say, well, isn't fun in all of those buckets? It should be. But if you call it out as its own focus, you get more of what you focus on. So when I actually called out the fun bucket, I started to realize I wasn't spending the time in some of my old hobbies that I really enjoyed. And so I started to reinvest in my fun bucket, and it actually helps the other areas. That's the other beauty of these areas, mind, body, emotions, career, financial, relationships, and fun, is that there's synergy. When things are going well in one bucket, it tends to help the other buckets. But the other idea is this is a starting point. It's a place to start. You can always add your own, but at least it gives you a good way to say, am I investing in some of the important things that really help me in my work life and in my personal life? Next. So we're going to take a look at 5 insights. Next. So insight number 1, the secret of results. So the secret of results is the beautiful intersection of time, energy, and technique. If you throw time at something, but you don't have an effective technique, you're not going to get the results. And a simple example that I can share is a friend of mine. She's a marathon runner. She knows that she's got her technique nailed, but if she doesn't put her hours in, she's not going to get the results in the marathon that she's used to. For me, the most significant insight that I learned here was that when I first joined Microsoft, I was overwhelmed by the amount of email. I was probably getting about 150 emails directly to me or CC me that I had to act on. And my manager said, hey, we don't pay you to do email. You have to do it. It's part of the job. It's important. But that's not really the value of your job. The value of your job isn't just doing email. I said, well, if it's not valued, then I don't want to do it. He said, it's not an option. You still have to do your email. All right. So then I said, I don't want to spend more than 30 minutes each day on email. And he said, okay, good luck with that. What he didn't know was that I went off and I found the people in the company that were the best at managing email and managing massive amounts of information, and I studied them. With each person, I would find out how do they actually manage their information, how do they stay on top of things, and I learned their techniques. And so from that day forward, I was always able to manage my email at 30 minutes in the day, no more than that, and achieve the results. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I just threw a bunch of energy at it, if I just threw time at it, but because I found the technique, that was the key. And the other key insight here is that no matter what you want to learn, there's probably somebody who's super effective at it, and people like to share what they're really good at. And so if you ask the question, you know what, I don't really have a technique for here. Who can I learn from? Who's really good at it? Who do you know that's really good at it? Who might share what their technique actually is? But the secret of results really comes down to spending the right time on the right things, the right way, with the right energy. Next. So insight number 2 is the secret of motivation. Now, a little story here is that when I was writing the book, Getting Results the Agile Way, I wrote almost the entire book in 3 days, and I got stuck on one chapter. Guess which chapter? It was the motivation chapter. I get back to work. My colleagues ask me, hey, so how'd you do with the book? You know, is the book done? I say, well, funny thing happened while writing the book. I got stuck on the motivation chapter. They said, what? You're the one that actually motivates us. How did that happen? I said, well, it's one thing to actually know motivation, to practice it, but how do you actually share something useful with other people? How do you teach other people how to find their own motivation? And as I was explaining this, I started walking through how to think about motivation, and then basically a light bulb went off. I went back home and I wrote that chapter for the book. But the real insight was this. It was a couple of things. It was that we can think of motivation as pain and pleasure, and we can also think of it internally and externally, our internal pains and pleasures, our external pains and pleasures. But we can also exercise our will or our choice. What is it that we really want to achieve? Who do we want to be? What experiences do we want to create? And then when we think of self-discipline, it's easy to have a negative connotation around self-discipline, but the idea is to just rewire it in your mind as it's correcting yourself. It's getting yourself back on track based on what you want to achieve. But another little story here that's actually important about sustainable motivation and finding our drive. It comes down to this. I knew intellectually that it was important for me to work out. I knew enough that if I made it fun, I would do it more. So what I did was I basically went out and I got I knew I didn't want to get a treadmill because that didn't look fun for me, so I got an elliptical. I thought it would be fun if I was on this glider type thing on an elliptical trainer. I thought that will be fun. Well, day 1, I went on the thing and I said, okay, nope, that wasn't fun. Day 2, I go on it again and then I realized, okay, no, this still isn't fun. I know it's important to do, but no, it's not fun. Day 3, I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I like to learn, so I'm going to learn while I'm doing this. So I started to listen to everything from Stephen Covey to John Wooden to you name it. I was like, all right, so now that wasn't fun either. Finally, I decided I'm just going to play my favorite music. So I play my favorite music, my body feels good, and what I realized at the end of the day was that it's about linking things to good feelings. My body actually started to enjoy it, started to enjoy going for the run, because now it actually felt good because I had linked it to good feelings. And so the surprise for me is that motivation can really come from your body, your mind, or your emotions. So if you're trying to talk yourself into something, sometimes the real trick is you have to find how to actually enjoy the process. And at the end of the day, if you want to make something sustainable, if it's a habit you want to change or something you want to keep doing, find a way to link it to good feelings. Next. So insight number 3 is finding your sweet spot. This is probably my single biggest game changer at work. There's this sweet spot. So you see talent, passion, and value there, but there's that sweet spot, which is that beautiful intersection. If you have a passion, but you don't have the talent, that's a hobby. If you have talent and passion, and you can find out where it's valued, value to you, value to your team, value to customers, that's the sweet spot. That's where you're on fire. And that's where you're always going to be your best. That's you sharing your unique value with the world. And to put this in perspective, sometimes we have a blind spot. It was about 2004, and a friend of mine who I trusted for great feedback, he said, you know what? You need to do more of that information architecture stuff you do. You need to do more of that information management stuff that you do. And I looked at him and I said, no way. I'm at Microsoft. You know, we're a platform company. We're a product company. We're a services company. That was the furthest thing from my mind, was doing anything around information management. He said, no. Think about it like this. The things that you do with information and architecture and mental models, that's the space of analysts. That's the space of architects. He said, trust me on this. Do more of that at work. And I trust him. I believed him, and so I did. The surprise for me is that was the year that I ended up with writing 8 patents. I ended up becoming a right-hand person to our general manager and shaping our product line. And really, my days got easier. I got better at what I did faster. And it was probably the most unbelievable surprise I could imagine, was that I actually ended up with more passion for doing what I was already doing well. But more importantly, I was flowing more value to my team, to customers, to the company. And it all went back to because I believed a friend of mine who had insight into what do I do best and what should I do more of. And the big idea there is both focusing on your strengths, but also knowing what do you actually enjoy doing. And the trick is to always figure out where's it actually valued. Is it value to you, value to other people, value to customers, value to the team? But always having clarity on that, finding your sweet spot. Next. So insight number 4 is about how constraints free you up. This was really a big surprise for me. I was going to Arizona State, and I took a class called How to Study in College. And sounded like a funny class, but it was actually a pretty insightful class. It was a great teacher. She had us read a lot of Dr. Seuss, everything from Oh, the Places You'll Go to you name it. And the most important exercise that she had us do was to put down on paper what our schedule really, really, really looked like for the week. Not randomly what does it look like, not what does it seem like in our heads, but what does our week really look like when we put it down on paper. And I actually resisted the exercise because in my mind, life was good. I had all this imaginary free time. But what was really happening was if I was playing volleyball, I was worried that I wasn't studying. If I was studying, I was worried that I wasn't playing volleyball. And it always felt like the grass was always greener somewhere else. It always felt like I was shortchanging. I couldn't actually be in the moment because any moment that I was in, I was worried about what I wasn't making time for, or where I should be spending my time, or where I wanted to be spending more time. And so when I showed my imaginary week, my teacher said, well, you're not actually showing any free time here. And I said, well, it's my schedule. If I put my free time here, it's not really free time then, is it? She said, no, the point of the exercise is you actually have to put in you have to schedule your free time. And again, I resisted, but when I actually put it down on paper, I saw that I didn't really have the free time that I thought that I did. And so I had to work my schedule around. But by the time I was done, a beautiful thing happened. I actually made time for studying. I made time for volleyball. And so when I played volleyball, I could really play volleyball because I had time to study. And when I was studying, I could really study because I knew that I had my volleyball time. And so the surprise for me at the end of the day was 2 things. Was that, number 1, constraints really do free you up. And if you want more free time, you have to schedule more free time. Next. So insight number 5 is the secret of work-life balance. This is incredibly key. If you don't have a way of thinking about work-life balance, and I think about it from a couple of different angles. One is finding ways to do more of what you love, really making more impact and doing more of what you love. Another angle on it is, how do I be more effective with the time that I already spend? And a third part of this really is choosing the right priorities and working on more meaningful things, which means what that really boils down to is less is more. But part of the struggle is that if we hope work-life balance, hope's not really a strategy. We can't just hope for work-life balance. We have to create it. And the way that we do that is we put boundaries and buffers in place. when I joined Microsoft, I got to hear a lot of different stories around how people putting their boundaries in place. One of the guys on one of my teams was incredibly effective at a 40-hour work week. I asked him what was his secret. He said it's pretty simple. His wife said if you're not home by 5:30 for dinner, you don't get it. And I was like, really? He's like, yep. He's like, that's how the rule works. Another one of my friends, his pattern was he would work any number of hours Monday through Friday, but he said on the weekends you will never find him because he's going to be on the mountain somewhere. And so we all have different ways of putting our boundaries in place. One of my early directors, his approach was Tuesday night was date night. But we all have our ways of how we put our boundaries in place, and you have to find what works for you. And when you start to ask people how they put their boundaries in place, there's always a lot of surprises. But it's fun to learn those patterns, what's worked for other people. And the biggest thing that worked for me was putting a time boundary in place, because before I had any time boundaries in place, I was used to, okay, my day is done when I run out of energy. Or, geez, I skipped breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, now my day is done because I'm too hungry. Not very effective. And the single best thing that happened was when my early manager said, nope, you're going to work 40 hours a week, and you're going to make as much impact as you were making when you were working 80 hours a week. And that was the challenge that he put on me. And it was amazing how much that forced getting clarity around what's really important. What are the outcomes that really matter? Not the activities, not the tasks, not the things that we're doing. What are the outcomes that actually matter? And one of the things that I find when I have I mentor a lot of people, first thing I'll ask them is I'll say, okay, how many hours are you working? And I'll hear a variety of things, but I'll just take the 80-hour case. So when somebody says, oh, I work 80 hours a week, I say, okay, what would fall off your plate if you could only work 60 hours? What would fall off your plate? They can never answer. They'll go off, they'll come back, they'll say, okay, I figured it out. Here's what would fall off my plate if I could only work 60 hours. I go, okay, that's an interesting list. Does your manager care about those? Does the customer care about those? Are those actually important? They'll go back, they'll resort it, they'll come back. I'll say, okay, great, so this is your updated list. Your manager thinks this is important. Here's your real priorities. Okay, good. What happens if you could only work 40 hours a week? What would fall off your plate? They can never answer that. Then they go back to the drawing board. They come back. But basically, it's this process of whittling down to where's the value? What's truly important? Where does your time even go? And when you start to put constraints on it, again, you start to actually see where's the real value. It's a very great forcing function. And so the idea here is that sometimes you need to put a minimum in terms of a boundary. You know what? I'm not putting enough time into my body, or I'm not putting enough time into fun. Or maybe you have to put a maximum. I'm putting too much time into my career, or too much time into X, Y, Z. But really, it's using those boundaries to support you. Next. So now we're going to go through 5 ways to drive our day. Next. So the first one, this is incredibly significant. It's all about finding your purpose. What gets you out of bed in the day with juice? How do you actually start your day with juice? And for me, if I step back and look at my biggest driving purpose, it's pretty simple. It's I want to improve the quality of life for as many people as I can, as long as I can. And when I tell people that, they say, well, why are you at Microsoft? And I say, well, it's a great arena, and I actually connect that into my day-to-day. Whether that means helping customers succeed on the platform, whether that means helping my team and lifting others up, but I connect my purpose on a daily basis. And what I find is that a couple things are useful. The most important thing is that it's about having a one-liner. If you have to look up your purpose, if it's something that you wrote somewhere but can never remember it, not very effective. Try to find a one-liner reminder. The other thing is it's useful to have our higher level life purpose to drive from, as well as a simple, pragmatic work purpose. And so if you're figuring out your work purpose, it can help to start with your role. And so, for example, an HR friend that I know, she was concerned about the perception of, oh, you're for the managers, or oh, you're for the employees. And she said, no, I'm a truth advocate. And when she reframed herself as I'm a seeker and advocate of the truth, she gave her job more meaning. And I give people some simple examples. Are you the researcher who finds the truth? Are you the bridge builder who actually connects people? So you can either find something aspirational, but if you're struggling with that, start with, what's your role and what's a meaningful goal. If you can identify your role and a meaningful goal, it also helps other people at work understand your unique contribution that you're bringing to the table. And when you know your one-liner purpose, your one-liner reminder of your purpose, when you have those days when they just aren't going so great, when you step back, remind yourself of your purpose, you'll get back on track. You'll find that energy. You'll get back on your path. Next. So way number 2 is we can actually deliberately design our days. There's a lot of part of our days that we don't control. There's a lot of things that are, we may feel like we're at the mercy. But if you start with an idea in mind that, hey, I'm going to change my startup routine, or I'm going to change my shutdown routine. To give you an example, my startup routine is pretty simple. Wake up, throw my shoes on, do my run, take a shower, eat breakfast slowly. On the back way to work, I think about my 3 wins for the day. So by the time I arrive at work, I've got a mental model of what success is going to look like. Are things going to come my way? Am I going to be bombarded? Of course. But the fact that I've actually already thought through what would success look like, I'm making very deliberate choices now. I'm not reacting. I'm responding. You know what? I'm trading up for that. Or you know what? Maybe this is a better opportunity. Or you know what? This that I already had in my mind was more important than what's coming at me. And I'm going to stay focused on that because I know what the bigger picture is. And so we can design our day, whether it's our startup routines or our shutdown routines. One little practice that I learned around a shutdown routine is that this is especially effective for project managers, but there's always more work to be done. But if you can imagine that you're getting home and you've got your hat of all your troubles for the day, and you take that hat and you hang it up on that metaphorical tree, it's always there tomorrow if you want to go pick it back up, but you don't have to bring it home with you. If you have a way of parking it for the night, parking your problems, it's a good thing to do. The other thing to keep in mind here is that we also have our ups and downs during the day. There are certain times in our day when we're at our best. And to give an example, I'm at my best 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4. Those are my best. I like to think of them as my power hours. 3 o'clock is kind of more my siesta time. Not a good time for me to do my heavy lifting or my heavy thinking or cracking big problems. But if I can take the bulk of the big challenges that I've got, and if I can find a way to get those into 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or 4, I really create a glide path for my day in an exponential way. Because what I'm doing is I'm using my best energy to crank through the challenges. Of course, I can't always do that. There's a lot of meetings that I'm always at and always in. But at least when I have that discretionary time, the fact that I'm aware, the fact that I'm actually aware of the times in the day that I'm at my best helps me design my days to be more effective and more productive and making more meaningful impact. Next. Way number 3 is about managing your plate. And it's all about, my mom actually taught me this. I used to go up to the buffet. My plate would be overflowing because I grab everything, and I didn't want to take multiple trips. I just wanted to grab everything in one trip. And I'd be slopping my way back to the table, and by the time I got to anything, it was cold and no good anymore. And my mom would always say, take 2 trips, take 2 trips. And what I learned from that was about biting off the things you can finish it, finishing it, and moving on. And you'd be amazed at how much momentum you build when you can actually finish things, and the credibility you build that when people know that you bite something off, you're actually going to do it. And you start to learn about your own capacity too. What's more realistic? Are you always biting off more than you can actually chew? And you start to build momentum when you start to bite things off and you make the meaningful impact. The other thing that happens too, though, is you start to get clarity of what's on your plate. When I was piling everything on my plate, it was hard to say, well, what was more important than this or that? And by the time I was circling back to things, time changes what's important. By the time I would circle back to something, it really wasn't important anymore, and I kind of missed the window. But when I started to manage my plate by focusing on a few things, doing them well, and completing them faster, because now I could close the loop, I could complete them faster, I was effectively managing a high-impact plate. I was choosing the things that were the highest priorities. I made sure that they were lined up to meaningful impact. and then I was completing them, and whenever I had to negotiate trading what was on my plate, I could be clear. Now, here's the things on my plate. Here's what I've let go. If we want to trade up for this, here's the impact that we lose, or here's the impact that we gain. But having clarity of your plate can only help you in probably ways you might not even expect yet. But if you write your short list of the balls that you're juggling and you really look at those, what are the ones you can let go? What are the ones that need more of your attention? And what are the ones you should finish and close the loop on? Next. Way number 4, questions for improving results. This is probably the most important thing that I've learned to do on a daily basis that only gets better with time. It's choosing more effective questions. And I probably should ask this question. The question is, what is thinking? And if you think about what is thinking, you're thinking about what is thinking. Thinking is really asking and answering questions. So if you want better answers, ask better questions. So here's a sampling of some of those better questions that I've found have been incredibly effective for improving effectiveness. For example, what are you making time for? What do you actually want to accomplish? You end a meeting, simple question, what are next steps? You're stepping back, looking at your portfolio of things to do. The question is, what's the next best thing to do? And while a lot of these questions really cut to the idea of improving productivity or improving effectiveness, they're also about improving your experience as you go. How can you actually be in the moment? Well, what are you always rushing through for? Simple question around something that you're stuck on, is the approach you're using, is it effective? Is it working? If not, why aren't you changing your approach? So you can really use questions in our information age, in our knowledge age, in our age of insight to become a lot more effective by asking more effective questions. And 2 very key questions that I think really shape both my career path and my quality of work and life. Number 1, are you giving your best where you have your best to give? If I'm not spending more time in my unique value and my strengths, I'm not really bringing my best to the table. It's number 1. Number 2, and this is really higher level, but it's, who do I want to be and what experiences do I want to create? If I think about that, how do I really want to show up? So who do I want to be and what experiences do I want to create? That really gets me on track. Next. Way number 5, this is all about having a strong week. It's all about having a strong week. And the trick here is really first and foremost, getting awareness of what are the things that give you energy, what are the things that you're great at, versus what are the things that drain you, what are the things that suck your life force out. And it's an exercise that I like to do whenever I take on a new mentee. The very first thing I'll have them do is I'll say, okay, let's go to the whiteboard or a piece of paper. Let's put Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. On that paper, what I want you to do is put W's on the things, on the areas, those time blocks where you feel like you're really not at your best, where you really feel weak and not really having a good day. And so it's usually a scatter chart. They'll have some W's in some of the mornings, some of the afternoons. Turns out that it's usually either a recurring meeting that they have, a recurring task that they have to do. And I'll say, okay, well, we can start to address this. But let's first get clarity around what makes you strong. Where do your strengths come from? And so they'll put S's on the week. I'm really strong some of these pockets in the morning and some of these pockets later in the day. And so now we have a very simple map of weaknesses and strengths. And it's a process, but it's a process of elimination and consolidation. Very first thing, and I like to call it worst things first, is can you squish the things that you need to do that really drain you? Can you get those into the first part of your day? Like the first hour when you're at your best, can you actually nail them in the first part of your day? Or can we get them in the first part of the week and we squeeze them into Monday? But it's really about consolidating those. The surprise is when there's something that you can't get rid of, you might find somebody who loves to do it. They live for that. They're at their best when you actually do it. And my simple example is I was good at doing budgets, but not very effective, not very efficient, and it was actually painful for me. And a colleague on my team, she lived for it. She loved it. She showed me her best ways. By the time she showed me all of her tips, tricks, best practices, I became a master at managing the budget in a simpler way and actually enjoying it. So she turned one of my weaknesses into a strength. So sometimes the trick there is pair up with somebody who's really good at what you want to learn. The other thing about designing a strong week is take the things that you want more of, and remember that lesson earlier was, put it into your schedule time for it. So I'm at my best when I'm brainstorming with the team. I very deliberately bake that into the week where we have more brainstorm time. That's when our best ideas come out. And in today's world of coming up with new ideas and creating value and being a game changer, find a way to do that. So we make more time for our brainstorming. And I also find that I'm at my best when I get to have mentor sessions, with my mentors. And so I make it a habit of each week I'm having lunch with somebody old, lunch with somebody new, and that really gives me new strengths, gives me new perspective, but really keeps me going. And so that's the key around way number 5, really designing your week, trying to find ways to squeeze out the things that make you weak and trying to find ways to do more things that make you strong. Next. And so here's really the uber takeaway, is that while you can't change the winds, you can change your sails. So you're the captain of your sailboat, change those sails, choose your adventure, create your experiences, and write your story forward. Next. And so that's our wrap-up. Use 3 stories to drive your day, your week, your month, your year. Drive your day. Your days are by design. If you fall off the horse, get back on. And we can open it up for Q&A.
Oh, that's great, JD. Thanks. Appreciate sharing all those perspectives. I'm happy to say that we do have a number of questions here from our live audience. But before I get to those really quickly, let me just remind everybody, if you could use the questions pane on the control panel, just please enter your question there and submit it, and we will get to it in the order we receive it. So, JD, our first question is from Roger, who is seeking a little bit of clarification on one of your previous slides. He's asking, is it 3 little stories per each big story?
Oh, great question. I find that they're loosely connected. So what I try to do is I'll have my 3 wins focused on the week. My 3 wins for the day may or may not directly map to those 3 stories for the week. Ideally, what they're doing is they're helping me trend in the right direction. But the reason why we have those 2 lenses, the week and the day, is that our days will actually change a lot more than our weeks actually do. And you'd be surprised, but when you plot out your wins for the week, you're going to tend to nail those more than your 3 wins each day, because your days are going to change in a more chaotic way. But very specifically, I wouldn't be worried about 3 wins per big win. It's more, what are my best 3 wins for the day with my 3 wins in mind for the week. It's really about keeping that perspective, but then focusing on 3 wins for the day while driving your story for the week.
Okay. Great, thanks. This is a question from Michael. Is the aim here to motivate or to inspire?
That's an interesting question. So first, for clarity, inspiration, I think of inspiration as breathing life into. And when I think of motivation, unfortunately, motivation tends to fall under the old metaphor of carrots and sticks. What I find the trick is really at the end of the day is to focus on inspiration from the inside out. If you depend on external dependencies and external motivating factors, it's not going to be as effective in the long run, because at the end of the day, you're starting to give out a piece of your power. Your power comes from knowing your values. So the example I gave earlier where I said, I'm not just calling back a customer, I'm winning a raving fan. For me, one of my values is customer focus. It's about making impact. And so I can take some of the things that I need to do. Might start out as motivation because, oh yeah, I got to go do that task. But when I rewire it as winning a raving fan, I've just internalized it. I found my inspiration, and I'm going to bring a lot more to the table, and I'm going to get a lot more out of the experience. So it's really a combination. It's not a this or that. It's an and. but I think inspiration is the key from the inside out.
Okay, great. JD, here's a question from Linda. How do you deal with the unknown obstacles that come your way daily and put a damper on the great design your day outline that you completed at the beginning of the day?
So that's a great question. I want to break it into two parts. So the design your day, the best way to design your day, starting earlier in the day before the random things come at you, is an important thing. If you try to design your day later, after you're already kind of in the chaos or in the trenches, you don't really have that mental model and that clean mindset to start from. So it's starting from the mindset. In terms of dealing with the things that come at your day that really either knock you on your heels or kind of set you back, the trick is, it's when you have those wins in your mind, they're your little North Star. They get you back on track. There's something to reorient yourself back towards. And at the end of the day, you can't control everything, but what you can start to do, and it's kind of this mindset thing, is you can start to respond more effectively because you have this mini plan. And because these are mini plans, they're simpler plans, they're really just focused on wins, results, and outcomes, you get a lot more flexibility in your day. So as things come your way, you can respond, you can react, you can trade up. You can also be more deliberate about, okay, in the past, I didn't have something better to trade up for. It was just, okay, one more thing I need to do. Now, because you have that awareness, you're making very deliberate choices. And this is another reason why you're not trying to make the super uber plan of everything down to the wire. You gain flexibility when you focus on outcome or when you focus on win. When you get mired in tracking the minutia of each task, you kind of lock yourself into something where it's easier to get thrown off. But if you up-level it, focus back on the win, the result, or the outcome, you gain flexibility. Because now it's either you're going to change your approach or you're going to actually trade the win or the outcome that you're going for, because more things, of course, did come your way. What you'll also find, too, is that as you're spending more time in the things that give you more energy, and if you're more inspired by the wins you want to achieve, it's a lot easier to respond to the things that are coming our way.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. Question from Barbara. She specifically references slide 23 and the example of designing your day. She mentions that the outcomes have parenthetical remarks such as must or don't want. What exactly are those references to?
Okay, so what I found is that in the world of prioritization, it's very easy that numbers can trap us or language can trap us or enable us. And so, for example, I'm a fan of thinking of things in terms of must, should, or could, not because I want to must myself to death, but I do find that if I just say something as a priority 0 or a pri 1 or a pri 2, it doesn't have as much meaning for me. Whereas when I think of something as a must, a should, or a could, I'm being a lot more deliberate about, well, the must is really important if I want to feel more effective today. If I can actually achieve my must, this really is a true priority. The should, that's a little bit more optional. It's idealistic. You know, I hope that I can achieve that. But if I can get clarity around my musts and not mix those up with my shoulds and my coulds, I create a smaller little set to focus on. And if by trimming that set and getting really, really clear on what are the things that I must do for, and these musts are based on what I identified as my wins, you know, here's what I really want to achieve. The fact that I've got clarity between must, should, and could has given me a little way to prioritize even further. It's like, well, I really wanted this, but that was more of a should. This really was more of a must. I'm really going to focus on that. So it's about getting clarity between, around priorities between idealistic, aspirational, and really critical path. Okay. All right, great.
JD, as I'm sure you're aware, job seekers are often asked in interviews to describe, strengths and weaknesses. David has a question. Can you cite an example or two of how you specifically spelled out strengths and weaknesses that might apply to job seekers specifically?
Okay, so that's a good question. I find that if you can tell a little story around how you made high impact on the job or what people seek you out for or what you're the best at, you just put yourself into a really good position. Usually we don't have to focus on finding what we're not very good at. We get that pointed out in our grades in school or pointed out in our reviews and our feedback, but the trick is to be very specific about how did you use what you're uniquely good at to make a big difference. And I'll just give a quick example. I did share that information architecture skill that I have earlier, but what I've actually done since then is I've used my ability to take complex information and simplify it to come up with new product lines. So I've been basically able to go and create new product lines that people could rally behind because I was able to take opportunities among a lot of chaos, take a lot of confusion across multiple teams, and boil it down into a simple, compelling path of high impact using my information architecture skill. So when you can take your strength and just take one meaningful story, actually it's good to have a working set of maybe 3 to 5 little stories of how you use your strength at work. It gives you something in an interview to really go back to and not just re-inspire yourself, but also share the scope. People can relate to stories, so I'm a fan of taking your strengths and put them in the context of a simple story.
Okay. All right, great. Here's a question from Phil, really sort of asking for some clarification. He said that the critical questions to ask are, who do I want to be, and apparently he missed the second question that that you said everybody should be focused on.
Okay, great.
Who do I want to be?
It's who do I want to be and what experiences do I want to create? And to elaborate on that real quickly, in the early days of my projects when I was running around in a chaotic way, even though internally I thought I was on top of things, my manager said that it was like running around like a chicken with their head cut off. And he said that, do I really want to show up that way? Do I want people to experience me like that? I said, no, I want to be more like James Bond. So he said, all right, well, why don't you show up that way then? And so once I had in my mind, who do I want to be? What experiences do I want to create? I got a lot more deliberate about presenting myself at work, which changed how people perceived me, and it changed the overall experience, and it got over some glass ceilings. So it's always who do you want to be? What experiences do you want to create?
Okay, great. Here's a comment and a question from William, who's really enjoying this presentation. He says it's a great presentation, and thank you. But William's question is, how do you take on mentorees?
Okay. So, yeah, that's a good, because that's kind of a priority question. But what ends up happening is I end up with a lot of requests, and usually what I'll do is I'll ask somebody for their quick story. What's their situation? Where are they? And I'll very quickly try to determine whether they need something ongoing, whether they actually need me, but what kind of help do they really, really need? Could they meet for an hour? Can I boil down a roadmap for them and a strategy? But I'll try to ask some very quick cutting questions. But the way that I end up taking them on is I realize that some people, I recognize that they were born for so much more, and that they just didn't have the right teachers or the right mentors or the right environment bringing things out. And depending on how many I have at the time, I tend to take those ones on because I'm all about the big transformation and the big change. So if I see the potential where there's somebody who's just I know is going to make incredible impact, and it's kind of like the underdog story. If I see somebody in the underdog scenario, those are the ones I tend to take on the most. In other cases where it's an executive or it's leaders of teams, I usually find that I can do it pretty quick, and it's more of a one-off session. It's like, all right, go. Here's some quick changes. Here's some strategies, some tactics. Here's some self-awareness. Here's some insight. It's more the underdogs that I tend to take on more for the longer term.
Okay. All right, great. Here's a question from Miriam. She asks, how do you marry your planning tools to online time or project management tools and or other calendars?
The way that I do it is I keep things very simple, and I focus on just really little tokens. I'll give you an example. When I come up with my 3 wins, I can elaborate with the story in my mind or verbally, and it's important to be able to say it. But what I write down really is, okay, I need my FY14 priority map. If I achieve that for this week, it's a win. I need a showcase of my new information product model. If I have that, it's a win. So I write down very small phrases or reminders, just enough to prompt me to remember the bigger story. And then what I'll do is I use very simple lists. So whether I'm using Evernote or using an email in Outlook or using Notepad, any digital tool that I use, Excel, Word, whatever, I keep very simple lists, very small choice of words, and I choose the high impact or the insightful part. I try not to put a lot of information down that I already know and I'll already remember. I try to put the things that are the most critical words to remind me of what's the story there.
Okay. Terrific. And this question from Stefan sort of builds or takes a different direction on that overall theme, and it's about using tools like Outlook or a smartphone, for example. How have you integrated those tools into your life?
Yeah. So at the simplest, if I was to break everything down, the simplest thing that keeps continuity for me is having those 3 wins for the day, 3 wins for the week, 3 wins for the month, 3 wins for the year at my fingertips. And so whether I have a note in my Outlook or written down on a piece of paper or no matter where, it's because I manage it as such a very tight, small, simple, focused list, the tool, as I go across tools, it really isn't a lot of work and it's insignificant. In fact, here's the surprise. The more you can say your win verbally, either to yourself or to a friend or to your team or to your manager, here's my 3 wins for the week, the stickier it gets and the less you'll even be looking it up in tools. Because if you have to keep looking it up in tools, you haven't really internalized it. And that's why why I really call this a simple system for meaningful results. You boil it down so much that your power comes from, I know my 3 wins for today. I know my 3 wins for the week. I don't even need to look them up. Sure, I'll get my reminders. Sure, I'm there. But here is a trick. This is a trick. When you're first starting this off, what I recommend doing is adding 3 reminders to your calendar. Have a recurring reminder on Monday, a recurring reminder each day, and a recurring reminder on Friday. On Monday, call it Monday Vision. When your reminder comes up, simple question, what are my 3 wins for the week? When your reminder for each day pops up in the morning, simple question, what are your 3 wins for the day? On Friday, when your reminder pops up, what are 3 things going well, 3 things to improve? If you put that in your calendar, it's always going to prompt you. You'll be back on track. So you actually don't need to use a lot of tools. It's a very simple approach.
Okay. Sounds great. And I think we have one final question here from Phil, who's asking whether you have any specific advice or successes for applying this in the OCD people, the obsessive compulsive disorder types.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I actually do. And this is significant because I've known too many people had anything from ADD to you name it, and here's the surprise. So one of my colleagues was actually on basically, there's drugs for ADD. His doctor prescribed it, and he didn't want to be on drugs anymore because what he found was that not only was it not working, he didn't like the side effects. And he'd asked me, how do you train your mind to be able to focus more effectively? How do you actually train your mind? And so I had to teach him a couple things. One of the things was that if you want to change what you focus on, change the question. So for example, if you walk into a room and you're always feeling negative, instead of asking yourself what's wrong with this picture, ask yourself what's right with this picture. Changing the question changes what you focus on. But I also wrote a very thorough set of guidelines on how to train your mind for focus. I actually have 60 some odd guidelines on how to train your brain for focus. It's on gettingresults.com. There's a topic called focus, and in there's actually focus guidelines. Those focus guidelines are actually the best synthesis that I have from everything I've learned around training your mind for extreme focus.
Okay, terrific. Well, great.
Oh, and I should have said that it was a success story. So he's not on drugs anymore, and he has extreme focus now.
Okay, great, great. J.D. Meyer, can't thank you enough for sharing these perspectives with our audience. It's really been great, and I hope everybody on the call has picked up at least a couple of new ideas and tactics here to apply in your executive lives. So on behalf of all of my colleagues at ExecuNet, want to thank you, JD, and invite everybody on the call to come back soon to one of our future programs. And I think you'll be getting a survey. We'll welcome any comments you have about this program, and certainly look to have you back. And JD Meyer, thank you very much, and all the best to you.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.